Welcome to the Sueños to Success podcast, where stories of resilience, perseverance, and transformation come alive. I'm your host, Dr. Victor Rios. Today, we have a powerful episode that digs deep into what it really means to pursue a doctorate degree or any form of higher education, really, not for prestige, but for purpose. Today's guest is Jonathan Ibarra, who just a few weeks ago became Dr. Ibarra. He's using his story to shift systems and serve his community. Jonathan, first of all, welcome to Sueños to Success. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Your Let's, man, let's start with from the very beginning. I want to introduce the audience to like your coming up story, but I think a hint to it is how I met you. And when I met you, you were a transfer student at UC Santa Barbara. It was your first few days on the UC Santa Barbara campus, and you get pulled over by UC Santa Barbara police.
Yeah.
All right, tell me that story.
Um, yeah, so I just transferred to UCSB from community college, and I was dropping off a friend at the freshman towers, and there was a bunch of cars like parked outside of they call it FT at UCSB, and
It's a dorm.
dorm room. We had one of the biggest dorm rooms at UCSB, and there was like an officer. We were all parked in red, so there was like 4 cars all parked in red. As officers just telling everyone you can't park here, you gotta go, you gotta go. So he's doing that and like going one by one to the cars. And then when he gets to my car, which at the time I had an all black Dodge Charger with rims and the tinted windows and stuff, he like,
Tell me, right? You were playing the part. You fit the description.
I guess I fit a description or something. I just like the car and this and that. And so he kind of like is going to tell me to leave, but then he's like, stop, turn off your like engine, this and that. And he's like, puts his hand on his like pistol and stuff, right? He doesn't pull it out, but he's like yelling at me to like, turn off the car, put my hands on the steering wheel. So I do, right? And my friend gets off. He makes her, sit on the bus stop and all that. And then,
At this point, had either one of you told them, "Hey, we're college students"?
yeah, she was like complaining, arguing with him. They were college students, and he's a college student talking about me.
Was this a UC police officer or a sheriff?
UCPD.
Okay, UC
Yeah,
police
I mean, I
officer.
found out. I mean, years later, this dude was put on desk duty at UCSB for other like those type of incidents that would students of color and stuff.
Okay, so he had a record of harassing students
Yeah.
of color.
So basically, they call backup. So another UCPD car comes, and then what she's like, I mean, he's talking to my friend, trying to like search her. The reason he stopped me was apparently it smelled like marijuana. I won't say whether there was marijuana because everyone at UCSB smells like that, usually.
So that was his pretext, meaning that and then when he walked by, he's like, "Whoa, you smell like weed."
Hmm.
Okay.
So somebody smelled it from 10 feet away from my car. Um, and I'm pretty sure the 4 or 5 cars that drove off before me, somebody had something too. Um, so they basically, he tells me this, and I'm like, I don't have any weed in my car. And backup comes, and they're like, we're gonna search your car. And I knew my rights at the time, right? I could refuse it, but I didn't have anything. So I was like, I literally told him, like, go ahead and waste your time. You can search my car. So his partners came, asked me to like put my hands out the window and like got me out, hands behind my back, walked me, in front of all these, freshmen in the dorms, sat me on the
What
curb,
were people doing? Like
staying.
parents were there, right? Or just students?
Just students.
Okay, students were.
Yeah, every evening, just students. The bus stop was there, so like the bus
What were
was
they
there,
doing while this is happening?
just either staring or walking by and just like looking at me sitting on the floor. I was embarrassed. Like, I fit a description. They probably didn't think I was a UCSB student either. And, sitting on the floor while they're searching my car and like going through my glove box, I had a bag of Freebirds in there and they're like looking on the bag and I'm like,
Three birds, burrito platter. Mhm.
and so they're rummaging through my trash and I'm just like, these people are not like there's nothing in the car. And I was mad. And finally they, finished searching the car or whatever. And the officer who stopped me comes up to me and he starts like trying to like lecture me and stuff. Like, I stopped you because this and that. And, I was like, "No, you saw me because I was Mexican." And he just snapped, like, he got mad and was, like, trying to raise his voice and stuff. And,
Let's pause there. You say you stopped me because I was Mexican. How do you know that?
it's a feeling. I mean, I can't prove, that that was the reason why, but, based on my experience growing up and having to interact with police when I never did anything wrong, that's how I felt.
So this wasn't your first time with a negative experience.
No, it wasn't the first time with police, and so it's just a feeling, like, when like, people look at you a certain way or something like that, you can just tell, um, and the fact that he let, like, 5 cars before me go and for some reason wanted to stop me,
So
that's
that was your evidence. You're like, wait, all these other students,
mm,
out of all of them, I'm the only Mexican,
mhm,
and I'm the one that you happen to
to stop, yeah.
stop and search.
Yeah, so I tell him that, and he gets mad, and he's, like, yelling, and then I tell him, like, I reacted the same way, and I was like, "Am I being detained? You didn't find anything, right?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "Well, Imma get up out of here then," and I just got up, and I went back to my car and, like, took off. Um, so that was the first year at UCSB, and me and you connected after that because I was trying to figure out, like, what sort of response I gotta have, like, 'cause it didn't feel right, even transferring to UCSB and being in an institution where, like, I was never I thought I would never be there, and then this is my, like, welcome to it. It's like you still don't fit in, so
Yeah. So there was a harsh welcoming. Like, you don't belong here. Let's search you. Let's see what kind of drugs you have in your car. You fit the description. And here you are, a transfer student trying to finish your college, or start the process of finishing your college degree at a prestigious university. And I had heard about you from your friend who eventually, she told me the story, and then I was like, oh, I gotta meet this young man and see what we could do.
yeah,
And that connection created like a 10-year relationship in terms of mentoring, teaching, and ultimately, right, watching you go through this great journey of getting your doctorate degree.
yeah.
Yes, I'm proud of you, man.
Thank you,
You've
for
come
sure.
a long way. So I want to go back because you mentioned that this wasn't your first time. So let's go to the moment. You're sitting on the curb. You're being embarrassed. You got people watching you being publicly humiliated.
Mm,
It must take you back to some moments in childhood where a similar experience happens. So, like, let's start in the beginning, like when you're a little kid. When's the first time you realize, like, man, this world's unfair?
yeah. Um, well, I mean, it's funny because at the time when that happened with the police officer at UCSB, I didn't make the connections of, like, having those experiences when I was a kid, but and this is like something that all of us as, academics and grad students go through, especially writing for like fellowships and college applications where like we have to put our traumas out there to get funding or something like that. I started making the connection. So a lot about, these experiences of getting stopped by the police, as a kid, and thinking back to other times when I interact with the cops and I get triggered. I didn't realize that I was triggered by like police presence, right? And for me, triggered in the sense where like I get angry. Like I'm afraid of them because you don't know what cops are going to do, but it's like an angry response that like I gotta interact with these people. So I did make the connection finally, like, writing these application letters and stuff like that to like
You were telling your story, your life stories, the application
some,
letter.
because of my research is related to like punishment, criminalization, and just like, oh, that's why like thinking back to the stories, this is why when I interact with a police officer, it never feels good. It never feels safe. So the first time that I interacted like directly with the police officer was at 4 years old in South Central. We live in South Central, and well, I already had known, to basically be fearful of the police because of my parents, right? They're both living street life, right? So they um, try to avoid interaction with police and stuff. My dad's also undocumented, so like there's the double whammy of like being undocumented and living the street life, right? And I had already been, socialized like avoid the police and things like that, right? So like there's
You were
still
4 years old and you already knew the rules
yeah
a little bit.
from before that,
I
right?
remember what kind of stuff would they tell you? Or would you see them do?
I mean, one example that's not even um like major, it's just like thinking about like how the police shape even family life is like we're driving in a car, right? And you turn on the light And my mom's like, "The cops are gonna stop us if you do that." But she's, like, serious too, like, she's worried about, like, getting stopped by the cops, if my dad's in the car or something like that. And just knowing, like, okay, we gotta do everything all the time to make sure the law doesn't, you know, impact our life and stuff, right? Even from, um, having multiple addresses and stuff like that just because probation and things like that, like, just that type of stuff, like, something with the law, like, we're trying to circumvent, right, as a family or whatever.
Yeah, to avoid, detention, to avoid, incarceration, to avoid court, to avoid a ticket.
Yeah.
There's a families not got a lot of money, and then all of a sudden you get a ticket, now you got less money, right? You gotta pay. And that is powerful, especially during our times right now when there's so many little kids, 4-year-olds growing up, and maybe just the simple fact that their family member, mom, dad, or both are undocumented, having to live a life of always avoiding
Mhm.
law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
Because you never know, and that must take an impact on a young person's kinda mental health. Like, man, I'm always on the lookout. My family's always the anxiety must be intense. Do you remember feeling that anxiety being little like that?
Yeah, I mean, I remember, like, worrying about, like, police, even internalizing where, like, as a kid, I worried about me getting arrested even though, like, again, it was, like, irrational, but when you're a kid, like, you know, what if I get arrested too or something like that, right? So
You had that on your little mind, like, what if they get me?
yeah.
And this event happens, you're in the car, you're 4 years old.
Yeah, so, yeah, we were driving in South Central, right? Hyper police environment, and, then the cops get behind us, and, my dad is driving, he's like I could see him, he's, like, nervous, like, looking in the mirrors and stuff, right? He's like and he tells me, like, "We're probably gonna get stopped right now." Um, so we get stopped, they turn the lights, whatever, they come to the car, and, the police officers, it was 2 of them, they walk up, and, they look inside, they see me and my dad, and they ask us to get out of the car. So my dad, again, he, definitely fits the profile. Like you know, tattoos, all that short hair and things like that, right? I think the officers might have known him too in that area. And so they want to, again, search us, search the car. And my dad, has to turn to me and tell me, like, don't be afraid, like, it's gonna be all right. Right. But in my mind, I'm like, my dad's going to jail, like right now, like where am I gonna go? Um, it was just you and him. It was just me and him, right? So I don't know, like, if they take me out of jail, like, who's gonna pick me up? My mom was at work. Like, I don't know what was gonna happen. So I'm thinking about all this, right? And even in that moment, my dad's like, it'll be cool. Like, don't worry. Um, but I don't want to believe them, right? Like, it's the cops. And so, they take us out, and then one of the officers like standing next to me, and I'm watching my dad, be put up against a cop car, and they're like searching and patting him down and stuff, right? They don't find nothing, and, they turn to me, and they're like, "Empty out your pockets."
Whoa.
So they
A
tell me
4-year-old kid.
yeah, so they didn't pat me down because that's probably illegal, but they told me, "Empty out your pockets," and then I was wearing, like, a little bucket hat, and they like
What's that?
it's like
Like the little Paddington Bear hat? Like the little Winnie the Pooh hat or something?
but, yeah, I think so. It's like, like, it has a flat brim all around, so with a fisherman's hat, so I was wearing that, and,
How do you remember all this? It's just so
I had, like, a crazy photographic memory.
wow.
That's how I passed your classes without studying.
For those that haven't figured it out, man, after getting to know Jonathan, he became my student in lots of my classes. And like I said in the beginning of the podcast, a 10-year journey of us being friends and me being his mentor and teacher. Um, Man, okay, so you got a good memory. You got this little bucket hat, and what do they make you do with it?
I mean, besides a good memory, it was probably a traumatic event that I, like, remembered and stuff. So I'm like, I give them my hat, and they, like, grab it, and they're, like, looking in the side, like, if I had anything, like, hidden there. Like, they automatically assume that my dad gave me something to hide or something. He didn't, right? So he didn't find anything, and then, I remember clearly, like, probably not verbatim, but the words the officers were, like, letting him go, and, they basically told him, like, "You're lucky your son was with you today, if not, we would take you in."
Wow.
So we left, and then, went straight home, called my mom, and like told him what happened and stuff. And
Do
yeah.
you know why they would have taken him in even though he didn't have anything on him?
I don't know if I don't know if he was on probation, because they can violate you for any little thing, if you're in a certain area you're not supposed to be in, things like that, or the fact that he was undocumented. Like, he wasn't supposed to be here. Like, no matter when he gets stopped by the police, like, for anything, which the way that he looks, bringing more police contact, he's undocumented at the same time. So, like,
Yeah.
no matter what, they have a reason to, like, take him in.
Wow, man. So here you are starting one of the biggest success journeys in your life, college,
Mhm.
4-year college, and then you get searched in the very same way you got searched when you were this little kid.
Yeah.
And that must have brought some kind of meaning to you in your mind, like, man, you could never really escape some of this stuff. And I gotta figure out a way to understand it, to study it.
Mm.
And I know like you became Dr. Jonathan Ibarra
Yeah.
recently after having completed a 3-year study following young men that are also growing up with a lot of contact with police,
Mhm.
getting in trouble at school. What was it like to have to follow people and study people that are kind of growing up in the same way that you grew up?
Um, it was both. I don't know if the word easy is the right word, but I can say easy and hard, right? Easy in the sense that I was passionate about it, right? A lot of these young people are treated, bad in schools for the way they look, the way they act, the way they talk, the way they look, all that type of stuff. So I was passionate about, like, working with them, mentoring them, and trying to be an advocate for them. And then the tough part was like seeing them go through similar things that I've seen, or getting in trouble for things that are minor, but because they're, Latino and Mexican kids, like, they just take the punishment to the extreme, or they just view them as, like, extremely, you know, dangerous or causing sort of safety issue. So that was the hard part, like seeing, students get in trouble in similar ways, that I did when I was in school, and just kind of like something that would connect it back to like my experience, for like arbitrary things sometimes, right? Just mistreatment. Like me getting suspended in kindergarten for like a haircut, right? Like that was something that I experienced. And then kids now, if they wear like a certain sweater with like cookies brand, it's like it's something that they get kicked out, I mean, for something like that.
Wait, listen, you're dropping a lot of nuggets, man. You just said that in kindergarten, he got suspended for a haircut.
Mm.
Tell me that story.
So on a weekend, my mom took me to the barbershop, and I was kind of arguing with there's like a 5-year-old in kindergarten that I wanted a haircut, you know, a fade with my hair slicked back, and wanted to look like my dad or the other people in the neighborhood. Not knowing that it's like racialized. There's a lot of stereotypes that come with that, and my mom knew that what people will assume those type of haircuts for whatever reason, and she was like resistant. She was like, "You need to get like a little boy haircut," and I was like, "No, I'm not a little boy."
What kind of haircut was she having in mind?
Probably like the comb over I have right now or
Oh,
something,
yeah,
right? Like, I
yeah.
don't know, not slick back or whatever. And I again didn't drop it, so she's like, "All right, do it." So I got the haircut, and then show up to school the next day, excited to like show off my haircut. And the school had a rule that you couldn't have the skin on the inside of your heads showing. And automatically, I walked into the classroom. The teacher's like, "You need to go to the principal's office." So I went, and they're like, "We have to suspend you until your hair grows back."
Damn.
And so for those of you who have get fades, it takes like maybe a week for the skin not to be showing so much. So I lost, a week of school in kindergarten when I'm trying to, learn how to be a student and stuff. But instead, like, they're teaching me that I don't fit in this like school, in this education, no system, right? Like, there's something wrong with me. So I was socialized to school discipline, right? Like, just for the way that I cut my hair. Um,
Whoa.
And then I did it again. I got suspended again for haircut because I was like, I want to look the way I want to look, and it shouldn't be an issue.
It seemed like you were normalizing it, like, man, this is my family, this is my community. and the system was saying, "No, this is criminal
Mhm.
activity is what it is, and we don't tolerate that."
Yeah.
Just the you come from a clashing of multiple worlds, like the clashing not just of Mexican culture, Latino culture, but also the clashing of being raised by parents that are caught up in that
Mhm.
street life and in a community where people are caught up surviving a community of struggle. And then you enter the conventional institution, like you run into teachers at school or police officers on the street, and they're trying to teach you, like, this isn't gonna make you a professional.
Yeah.
And those worlds are always colliding with each other. Let's talk about your parents a little bit. Did they get a chance to finish their education through high school and do some college?
College definitely not. So my mom graduated from high school, um, and so she graduated and then, just she had been working since she was 13. So she just stayed at her job and has been at the same company since she was 13.
Well,
Yeah. So she just went straight to work and, had us maybe 3 or 4 years after high school. And my dad, he actually didn't finish high school. He got kicked out his first day of ninth grade because he got jumped, um, and they kicked everyone out. He got, so he was a victim or whatever of jumping, but because again, the school labels everybody as like, "We gotta get rid of all of you."
zero tolerance, gang activity, was it that
Yeah.
they considered it?
Mhm. So he got kicked out and he just never went back to school from then. So my dad, had, rough experience in the school system. I mean, the first time he ever got arrested was from a school campus too.
Mm,
Um, at 11 years old. So like for him, he never finished and stuff. Like he was just pushed out of the school system.
So your parents didn't get to go to college, and you're being raised in the household. There's struggle there, financial, there's struggle with law enforcement. And at what point in your journey do you tell yourself, maybe I should be the one that goes to college?
Um, it was always in the back of my head because my mom always pushed education on me, since I was a kid. Again, like there was so much stuff going on, back home, with my dad, you know, stints in, jail and or incarceration and stuff like that, right? Other, possible run-ins with police and things like that. So just a lot of stressful things, you losing a cousin to violence and stuff. And this all impacts my schooling, right? Like I really didn't care at the time about like school or like doing my work and stuff. So I didn't. I would just go and like, I don't know, take tests and like not really study and all that. And so in school I just didn't care about it, right? But my mom was always like, you're smart, like you need to make sure you go to college and all that type of stuff, right? And part of me, like hard headed, is like, you didn't go to college, like why do I have to go and stuff, right? But then she would say, like, like I'm a single mom, like you see how hard I work every day. Like, do you want to do this, right? Like you're smart, like you should go to college and make a life for yourself is what she used to say, right? Like, I want you to make a life for yourself. And in her mind, like even if you ask her, she'll say, I don't know why. Like she'll say, I don't know why, but I always push school on my kids, right? Because she didn't
Mm.
like think about college herself, right? She didn't know anybody that was in college and stuff, right?
So yeah, maybe she didn't have that opportunity.
Mm,
She had to work, you
yeah,
said, since 13, and high school is probably a big achievement,
mm,
and then starts having kids, and a relationship. It makes sense. And then now, like, all her dreams and aspirations are on you.
yeah.
Wow.
So she always pushed school, and I didn't listen until I was in community college, and like I was just like I was actually a dishwasher, and
So you finished high school.
finished high school.
You did you go straight to community college?
I think I took a semester off.
What did you do?
Um,
Dishwash?
I was a dishwasher.
Where at?
Oh, here in Santa Barbara,
What was the
the
place? Labor
mission.
Old Mission?
Yeah, they had a kitchen, like a whole s- like a retreat center, and they used to cook for like different like events and stuff like that. And I was a dishwasher there with my family who worked there. So
That's how you got the job?
yeah,
Your family network?
my family network. Yeah, my uncle was a chef there, and started working there, and I was, like, washing dishes, and,
'Cause you grew up in LA.
I grew up in
Grew up
LA.
in Boyle Heights.
Yeah.
South LA, Boyle Heights.
Yeah, I was in South LA until, like, 6, and then Boyle Heights till I was, like, 17 or 18. 17.
What made you move to Santa Barbara?
Just to get a break, like, from home life, having to, always feel on edge, like, back home in Boyle Heights, right? It was just a different type of lifestyle, right? Where, like, there's constant reminders of trauma and things like that. And then I also had heard that, like, I went to Santa Barbara City College, and it was like, it's a top community college, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna just go out there and live with my family that's up here in Santa Barbara. So yeah, I left like at 17 and came up here, um, to start community college.
What was that like coming, Boyle Heights to, Santa Barbara on a campus where anywhere you walk on the campus, you look and there's the ocean. Yeah.
It was distracting.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to spend my time, like, in between classes, like, at the beach, just walking around and stuff. At City College, I still didn't feel like I fit in, right? So I didn't make many friends there. Like, I would, just go to my classes and then, spend time at the beach. I'll sit out at the stadium and just, like, look at the ocean and be like, man, this is way different than, like, East LA, Boyle Heights. And stare at the ocean and, like, think about, like, my future. Like, I don't know what I was gonna do. I was taking random classes at Santa Barbara City College. Like, I changed my major, like, 4 times, right? I started, like, computer science because I think I had a class in high school where I made a website, and then I found out, like, that's not computer science, and I found there was a bunch of math, and, changed it, and then,
Wait, I thought you had a photographic memory, man. You could memorize all this stuff.
qualitative data. I don't know about numbers and stuff.
You could memorize like humans
Interaction.
interacting with each other, but in terms of and you probably get bored with the math and the computer science stuff.
Yeah, it's boring.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was just there, like, taking random classes and working full time. But yeah, so I still don't feel like I ever had I didn't have the full even community college experience. Like, I didn't even know about. I never spoke to an academic counselor. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. I just randomly went on a website, and it was like, these are the classes you need to transfer. And I wanted to go to UCSB, so I just followed that list literally for like 4 years. If I were to talk to a counselor, I probably would have finished in 2 years, but I just
So you were in community college for 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Wow.
And the statistics show, I mean, most people who start community college don't make it to transfer. So
Yeah. So you have no guidance. You're working full time, living with family, and 4 years you spend it in community college. What made you realize like, oh man, now I gotta level up. I gotta go to the university.
um, I mean, that was always my goal, to get a bachelor's. Like, I knew Santa Barbara City College, like, didn't lead to a bachelor's, so I always had UCSB on my mind, especially visiting family up here from when I was a kid. I just wanted to go to UCSB and graduate from there. I didn't know what I wanted to study, and, at Santa Barbara City College, I finally figured out, just talking to random, like, older people, like, at my job at the mission and stuff, right? Like, they would ask what I was doing with school, and I would tell them, like, "Oh, I'm, taking these classes," or, like, "I wanna study this," and, funny thing, one of the older people I talked to, he's like, "You need to what you sound like you wanna do is sociology." And I was like, I had heard all these bad things about sociology, like, "Don't get a social major, like, there's no money and all this type of stuff." So I was, resistant to it, but I finally took a social class at Santa Barbara City College, and, it was stuff that I already knew from, like, experiencing, or hearing things back home where it was like, I didn't need to read it in a book, and I was like, "I can write about this, like, all day and stuff."
Yeah, because
So
in sociology, how would you define sociology?
I mean, it's a study of society, human interactions, both large and small, like, interpersonal, interactions, but the way that I really, what I enjoy sociology for is, like, the connection between, like, macro level things like poverty and, racism, and how that trickles down through institutions to shape, people's interactions and stuff.
So the stuff you was learning in class, you could use it to understand 4-year-old little
Mm,
Jonathan being searched by police, pocket checked, literally pocket checked,
yeah.
and then 5-year-old little Jonathan being kicked out of school for having the wrong haircut. Now you can use those tools to understand how that wasn't just your fault or your family's fault for fitting the
Mhm.
description, but instead was this kind of outcome from these larger systems in place that are set up
Yeah.
to fail certain people in certain communities.
Yeah, and I mean, I could even, like, pinpoint the exact time when I made that connection.
Mm.
I was literally chilling at the beach, like I always did during class in between classes or whatever, and this random dude was walking through the beach and, tall guy, he actually played basketball, and he asked me, "Do you play ball?" And I was like, "I do." And he's like, "Oh, and what about you?" And he's like, "Yo, I'm, like, pro overseas." I'm like, I don't play ball like that. Like, I'm not like, I just play pickleball." But we started talking and, at the time, I was taking the social class at the time, and, he's like, "Oh, there's this book I wanna give you." And, we exchanged info, and he gave me the next day The New Jim Crow. Like, he just randomly gave me this book from that conversation, and I read it, I
And
was trying to read it.
The New Jim Crow is pretty much a book about how the black community to this very day is set up for uh, high contact with the criminal justice system, and how that system has existed for a long time, but it still continues to kind of have the legacy of Jim Crow like racism in our modern times. So he handed you the book.
Yeah, so he gave me the book, and then, I struggled to read it and kind of understand what it was talking about, but I got the, like, the gist of it, and, reading things like the comparison of cocaine laws versus crack, and, like, knowing from my experiences back home that they were the same thing, but racialized in different ways, and it leads to different interactions and stuff.
So yeah, there was a time in our country, a 30-year period, this law passes a national law in 1985 where if you had 5 grams or more of crack cocaine, it was a 5-year mandatory
Mhm,
sentence, whereas you had to have 500 grams of powder cocaine to get that same
mhm,
sentence. So even the way in which people were being sentenced affected disproportionately poor communities of color.
yeah,
And so this is all in the book, and you're reading it, and you're like, wait a minute, I've lived through some of this
mhm,
stuff on the top end, and now I'm seeing the roots of where all of this ends up. And it's helping you understand almost your own life journey and your
yeah,
community.
yeah, and more so, again, like, my community's story and, like, my parents and all that, just, kind of seeing there's a racialized system that targets and confines generations of people and stuff, and, reading that, I was like, "Oh, okay, like, I definitely need to do sociology," and then, like, my plan from there was it was, like, looking, like, "Who's Michelle Alexander?" And I was like, "Oh, she's a civil rights attorney." I'm like, "I wanna do that." I don't know what she did, and I assumed it was writing books about stuff, but I was like, "Oh, an attorney is way different than, like, writing books." So when I was just like, I wanna go to law school eventually." So then from there, um, I just buckled down with, like, City College, and I was taking, the maximum more than the maximum number of classes. Like, I remember the semester before I transferred to UCSB, I was taking classes at City College, at, like, College of the Canyons in Valencia and Ventura online so that I could take, like, 7 classes at a time just to, like, go to UCSB already. Um
Wow. So you were driven
Mhm.
and you wanted to transfer to a sociology major.
Yeah.
Wow.
So and then I through my little, like, internet searches, I found out about tag agreement, which is a transfer agreement. I think it's just transfer
Transfer
agreement.
guarantee.
Yeah, transfer admission guarantee.
There you go.
So I saw that, and it said if you get a minimum 3.2 GPA at community college, you automatically get into UCSB, amongst other colleges. So I was like, "Alright, all I gotta do is get a 3.2." I mean, I got a 3.6, but I was like, "Alright, like, I'm automatically gonna get into UCSB." So that was the plan, and I just followed again, like, without talking to a counselor, like, just whatever the online thing said, and, I got accepted to UCSB.
Oh, that's what's up. That's full circle. And then we meet. Um, I think a lot of people out there underestimate what it takes to get a degree. for someone like us, you know, I'm talking about, Mexican American, low income, uh, individuals, particularly men, and and then a higher education with a doctorate degree, right? The stats. Let's just go to your community where you grew up, Boyle Heights. The high school graduation is 64% in Boyle Heights, and that that is very low compared to the rest of LA Unified, which is 84%. So already, right, you're growing up in a specific community of LA, your stats are gonna just decline in terms of even getting through high school. And then, for Boyle Heights residents, 6% of the residents have a bachelor's degree. I think the national average is like 32%.
Mm.
So you come from a community, again, a community struggle where folks don't have those opportunities to get those degrees. And it's not like you had a lot of role modeling out there. And so along the way, you're seeing yourself finishing undergrad, and you're thinking like, man, I got to be that less than 1% that actually gets a doctorate degree, because in our community,
Mm.
less than 1% of us get a doctorate degree. And so, what made you decide, man, I've already been in school 6, 7 years. I'll do another 6, 7 years if I need to become Dr. Jonathan Ibarra.
I mean, you didn't tell me it was gonna take another 7 years, bro. Um, yeah, I mean, I decided again, like law school was what I wanted to do, and I actually talked to um, there's a counselor specifically for like pre-law students at UCSB, and I had a meeting with them, and I went to a few of the workshops and talked about what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to, do civil rights laws and like change policies and that type of stuff. And this person was kind of saying, you don't do that as a lawyer.
Mm.
He was telling me, when you go to law school, you learn how to be a lawyer. You learn how to work within the system. Like, what you're talking about sounds like maybe you should think about public policy or something like that. Um, so there was doubts about, I'm like, oh, if I go to law school, like, is it even gonna help me, do what I want to do? Um, so I started doubting law school around that time, and I had already, met you and, seeing, the impact that you've had, through research and stuff. I started thinking like, okay, can I, use research to like impact the community and give back to young people, who grew up in similar, environments. And, I started really thinking like, okay, maybe I'll try the PhD route. And I was also afraid of the money for law school. I had heard that, it's like over $150,000. And then,
Oh, to go in debt.
yeah, to go in debt, right? Especially knowing that what I want to do isn't like big law. It's not going to make me money. It's going to be tough for me. Like I have to go in debt to help people and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, I think I had talked to you and you told me that grad school's funded. And I was like, what does that mean? Explaining that, a lot of programs you can get funded, UTA and stuff. And yeah, decided to try out grad school first. Actually planned that my last quarter at UCSB and, wrote this 20-page paper to like have like a writing sample. And, again, took that upon myself, like, with my professors, I was in your class, right? Trying to have something because I was in part of McNair's program, I didn't really know what a PhD was. And I just knew I needed like a research writing sample. So yeah, I decided, to try a PhD route. I think also, again, like, seeing somebody like yourself professing at UCSB is like, oh, there's someone that has similar experiences, like another Mexican man too, who's teaching, um, inspired me. And then I also had along the way like grad students that were teaching, right? One of my good mentors, she was my professor. I didn't know she was a grad student, right? She was also one of my first Latina professors. And I thought she was a full professor, and she called and like took me under her wing too, and like helped me with grad applications and all that. So just seeing like
Who was this?
Marissa Salinas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so
That's awesome. Shout out to Marissa Salinas. She was a fellow student that,
yeah.
that ended up becoming a professor. And, along the way, I think, people that grow up in struggle, man, they want to help others that
Mm.
are coming up in struggle.
Yeah,
Right.
so, seeing again people come from similar backgrounds, like, doing research and, like, teaching and stuff and, like, with passion and all that, um, I made that decision and applied to UCSB and a few other schools.
Yeah. The odds are stacked against us, and when people underestimate us, you know, um, they're they're already starting with a losing bet. Because if we can overcome, in your case, right, that police harassment when you're little, the poverty, the maybe the role modeling that is not the best, the struggle, all of that. If you can overcome that, having to fend for yourself, put yourself through community college with no one guiding you, by the time you get here, you've built so much resilience and so many skills to navigate systems that no one can take away the fact that you have a slot.
Mhm.
Like that slot, you earned it.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people underestimate us because they think, well, y'all don't belong here. When I first got to UCSB, man, I'm sitting at my desk, setting up my little degree from Berkeley. You've been in my office, you've seen it. It's a big plaque and it says Ph.D. UC
Yeah.
Berkeley. And I'm putting it up, man. I'm aligning it perfectly to the wall. And some old guy, man, shows up and throws a stack of papers on the desk. And he says, I need copies. I need 60 copies. And I looked at him because I realized that he thought I was an assistant. He didn't think I was a professor. And I said, I'm a professor just like you. And he just kind of like brushed me off, walked away. And in that moment, man, um, I felt like, man, people here feel like I don't belong,
Yeah.
but I'm gonna prove to them how much I belong.
Mhm.
And that was the beginning of my career. So sometimes, those odds that are stacked against us are the very um, opportunities that allow us to succeed and succeed at higher levels than other people. And I understand that not only have you recently completed your PhD,
Yeah.
but you also got a job lined up. And it sounds like an incredible job. You're going to be a professor at California State University.
Polytechnic
Oh,
State University.
my bad. Hell, you're gonna have to tell us what that means, man. That's a fancy word. I don't even know I could say that word. California Polytechnic University, San Luis Obispo.
Yes.
That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
All right, break it down. What does this all mean?
Well, the polytechnic part, which is what excited me about the job, is like a learn by doing model. So, like, in the classroom, for example, at UCSB, there's a lot of lecturing and, like, theory tossed around and stuff like that, and then we just, get tested on it. Um, at UCSB, I took that to the community, volunteering at different organizations and stuff. So that's kind of what the hands-on research is, right? Cal Poly has a big agricultural department, and they, work in ranches and, like, make products and work in the fields and stuff. So it's like this hands-on learning experience, that all the polytechnic schools do. And for sociology, right, part of my role is creating opportunities for students to go work in the community, right? Local schools, different nonprofits, and that's their hands-on learning. Like, a lot of the students want to go into the criminal justice field or social work, right? So that's really the model that Cal Poly is based on. So that's how I did my grad program, my research project. Like, I was doing mentoring at the same time. So I'm excited to like be in a place where that's like valued, right? It's part of my job is to like be out in the community and then make um, connections to open up doors for my students and stuff. So that's the polytechnic part of it at Cal Poly.
That's profound, man. So you're gonna be hands-on and teaching students how to be hands-on.
Hmm.
One thing I want to note is that you and I have been talking a lot about how your growing up experience and the negative experiences with police. But me and you, along with another former student, Greg Pietro, we actually wrote an article in the top sociology journal on on policing
Mhm.
of Latino males, and there we provide solutions, right? And the solution that we provide is this idea that police officers are kind of constrained by the system they work in, and that they tend to flex between very punitive or
Mhm.
very, sort of community oriented at times, and that the solution here is to make sure we change systems so that police officers have a little bit more opportunity to understand the communities and the people they're policing and to be able to provide the right kinds of resources to communities. So I wanted to make that note because a lot of times as sociologists, like you say, we're just uncovering the problem, but here you and I and Greg are thinking about
Mhm.
solutions, and that's what you're gonna continue to do in your career.
Yeah,
Yeah, man, I shout out to you and to any students that end up becoming your students because I know you're gonna be a great teacher there.
Imma try.
Yeah. Man, so now you're bringing that degree back to Boyle Heights, back home. Um, it's beautiful, man. There's research on social mobility. In this case, it's a study from Brookings that shows that students from low income backgrounds who complete a doctorate degree are among the most likely to contribute to community based work,
Mhm.
advocacy, and mentorship. So you're just not succeeding for yourself to make money, but you're cycling the success back to your community. Even if you're far away from that community, you're still giving back. So tell me a little bit of the solutions you have found in your research to support young people that are getting in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first ones that I thought about right now, especially, like, when you're talking about the article we wrote, um, and, like, even working with the community, like police officers and trying to understand them and stuff, like, my take on it is separating, like, that role from, like, punitive agents, right? Like, I don't really believe that, like, cops can mentor when their job is to police and things like that. And at the school, right, you know, unfortunately, schools are mandated reporters, and there's different policies, where, if something's framed as a safety issue, right, the response is to, like, discipline, right? So I really think there needs to be a separation from discipline and support. A lot of what's going on right now, especially with restorative justice and, like, non-punitive changes in the education system, is leading to, like, combining the two again. And I know you kind of talk about that in Punish, right? But it's a combination now where it's kind of, like, becoming more hidden, right? Where you have, like, an intervention room that is also a student center. So then you have a mix of students who are trying to get support, but then they see people that look like them getting in trouble and punished, right? Um,
So you got like kids that need basic mental health help, and they end up in the same room as kids that like, you know,
got in a fight,
got to beat someone up.
but those kids also need mental health services, right? But the school's like, "We need to punish them," right?
Yeah. Without even knowing it
Yeah.
sometimes. They're like, "Oh, you got a mental like, your grandma passed away, you're down, go to that room."
Mhm.
And then before you know it, I call it a vortex of promise because all the kids that have promise but need support end up in that same room.
Yeah, and one of the outcomes that I talk about in my work is similar to the article we wrote, right? Where, with community policing, there's certain people in the community who they're targeting who aren't gonna fully trust them, right? Same thing with, like, apprentice students. You can offer them mental health services and things like that, but if you don't address, like, the historic punishment that they've had in school systems, they're not gonna take that support because they're worried that it's gonna lead to discipline and stuff, right?
All right, Jonathan. So we're talking about trust here. You're mentioning that trust is essentially the building block of any of us trying to help people that are struggling.
Mm,
Like 4-year-old Jonathan, you know, still lives in grown up Jonathan. And if we understand that story of how there's been unjust treatment from a young age, even though I didn't cause that pain, maybe as someone that works for the system, I could start to listen, understand, and of course, find ways to build trust.
mhm.
And the more trust you build, the better you are at reaching people that are coming up from struggle. And I mean, once again, just emphasizing the powerful journey you've gone through, and now you're going to be a professor at a university. It's an incredible testament to just your resilience.
Thank you.
Um, I want every student out there listening to know this. Your pain doesn't disqualify you. Your pain doesn't make you less than. Your pain, right, doesn't make you um, a nobody, right? Your pain actually qualifies you to lead, right? The greatest souls out there in the world are seared with scars. Your pain allows you to heal others, to transform our society. And that's what Jonathan's doing. Um, I wonder, Jonathan, if you had some words of encouragement to young people listening. Sometimes young people, maybe in their classrooms, teachers are playing the podcast for them.
Mm.
Got some words for these young people?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big ask, but I mean, the first thing that comes to mind, right, is turning your story and your experiences, using it as motivation, right? When teachers, told me that I wasn't, going to pass their class or something like that, right? Like, I would get mad, right? And I use that as fuel. But then I think about like that's, part of a response, right? Again, we need to, not just use our resilience to get through. So the other major thing, and this is like the actual advice, is reach out to people and trust them to, support you. We talked about trust. So you have to, interact with people and figure out if you can trust them because there are people out there that want to help you succeed. And one thing about, stories I've shared today that I got here from, different mentors that I had throughout my life, right? Initially it was, at school when they were treating me wrong, it was negative mentors, right? Who were mentoring me to, use the resilience to like get to where I'm at. And then, finding positive mentors from like grad students who helped me with, getting to grad school, finding professors to help me. Um, Asking for help is the recommendation that I have for young people, right? Like figure out who you can help, who's going to support you and, trust that they're gonna help you and just yeah, reach out and take the support that you can get because none of us make it on our own. And I gotta take my own advice too, because asking for help is hard.
Hmm.
For us in our community, especially, men too, like we need to ask for help because nobody makes it by themselves. No matter how successful in the world, anybody successful we see in the world, like they did not do it by themselves. So that's my words of
Thank
advice.
you. Yeah, pride is the devil, right? If you think you're too proud, I'm a lone wolf. I could do it on my own. I don't need help. That'll sink you in a hole.
Hmm.
And the times in my life when I found opportunity, I've actually said thank you. Learn to take a gift, and that's what you're saying. People are offering you help. Learn to take a gift. Some people, nah, I'm too proud to take a gift. I'm too proud to ask people for help. I'm too proud to join this program. But along the way, if people have a program or offer you support or offer you guidance, mentoring, listen to them. Sometimes, your own family is trying to tell you how to live a better life. Hey, don't drink so much. Don't drink so much on the weekend, or don't drink so much after work, or you got your family hassling you about you know not showing up 100%. Instead of talking back, instead of being resentful or getting angry, maybe listen to them. Maybe this is your moment to listen to your loved ones that are trying to pass on a positive message, trying to give you a little hook of opportunity. And don't be too proud because, like I said, pride is the devil, right? It could sink you down. Jonathan Ibarra, you're living proof that a doctorate can be more than a credential. It can be a community commitment on behalf of every first generation student out there listening, right? Every young person who ever questioned their worth. Thank you for showing us the way.
Thank you.
If this episode touched your heart or sparked your drive, share it with a young scholar, an educator, or someone who needs to hear this. This is Sueños to Success with Dr. Victor Rios, where your past doesn't define you, your purpose does. Thanks for being here, my brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That was good.